Hi there, and welcome back to the Fuse Show. Today I'm joined by Leif Elgethun. He is the CEO of Retrolux, and he is an engineer by trade and a serial clean energy entrepreneur by choice, taking 5 companies to profitability with 2 exits. He is a community and a thought leader and loves gravity sports. Today's title of our show is Carbon Neutral Buildings, Myth or Possibility, and our tagline is Can software and AI help carbon neutral buildings uh, a reality in time to meet Biden's ambitious climate goals? Thanks for joining us in the show.
Thanks, David. Happy to be here.
So, before we get started, can we define what a carbon neutral building is?
Yeah, definitely. So, carbon neutral buildings come in two forms. The first form that most people are focused on right now is can we make buildings carbon neutral that are existing today and how they consume energy, how they process their waste, how they use their water. So, this is really making the operations of an existing building carbon neutral. So, you might think of that by using solar panels for the
Mhm.
electricity of a building. The second, more complete version of a carbon neutral building is ensuring that the entire building is carbon neutral. You really only get one chance to do that because that's when you build the building. And so
Mhm.
there's a lot of investment, a lot of thought going into how do we make concrete carbon neutral. Obviously, wood is a carbon sink, but steel and concrete together account for 13% of carbon emissions in the world. And that is what we use to build our buildings. So there's a second piece of it, which is how do we make our new buildings carbon neutral. But right now, people are still mostly focused on and really working hard on making buildings carbon neutral in their operations, not in the build of the building itself.
And when we say operations, are we talking about the things that happen inside the building, like I don't know, like the paper, the materials used inside the offices, or just the power and the water and the trash?
Yeah, so building operations is typically limited to the systems that operate the building. So that would be your energy, your water, your IT, your fire systems. These are the operational
Mhm.
technologies of the buildings. The um, consumables that the tenants or the occupants use is typically considered a slightly different part of the problem. And that's tackled more by the tenants or the users of the building. And you might see companies that have recycling programs and other programs to make sure that what they're buying is carbon neutral in their procurement processes as well. So that's not considered carbon neutrality of the building. That would be
Mhm.
considered carbon neutrality of the company's operations, not the building's operations.
So I guess from the outset, when I first got this title you suggested, I'm actually on the side of I don't really want to be so cynical as to call it a myth, but I do realize that there's a lot of real world factors at play, and then there's historically been a lot of resistance to more carbon neutral production of anything.
Mhm.
Can you walk us through why you think that's been the case, and how do you think that will change going forward?
Yeah, it's real simple. We have gotten to a point in our societal human history where the people that make money in our society have made money by using fossil fuels to do things. And they happen to make lots of money, and they happen to have lots of lobbyists, and they happen to be really good at slowing a transition to things that don't use their product, which is fossil fuels. Let's make no bones about it. This is a money problem. The people that have it don't want to lose it, and so that's the main reason it's been a challenge. There were electric cars back in the early 1900s that actually almost became the de facto car technology before the oil companies fixed that for themselves by ensuring they had a market for oil. So the technologies have existed in the past, they have existed in the middle. We just haven't had societal, I think, buy-in that we need to make this transition, and making the transition is more important than the profits of the companies that are providing those same solutions and services today. So that's the big change, is that society says, you know what, the risk of not making this transition is so big that we can't um, continue to allow the status quo to continue anymore. And I've been working on this for now 15 years, and that process was definitely in progress when I got into clean energy and sustainability. But the trend towards this being a global problem that we have to fix has been accelerating like crazy in the last 2 to 3 years. So that's been really exciting to see. But again, the reason it's been really hard to see that transition happen is that there's a lot of money from the companies that are doing things the way they're doing them right now, whether it's plastic, which is oil, whether it's fossil fuels for cars. I mean, there's just a lot of profits that are going into those companies that have given them the capital to ensure the status quo continued. And without societal pushback, the status quo will continue when there's profitable companies. So that grassroots effort, that awareness that is finally happening, that this is a problem that we have to deal with, is providing the catalyst for movement to go just faster and faster and faster.
So you mentioned that you've been in this industry for 15 plus years. Have you been passionate about renewable energy and clean energy from the very beginning, or is that something you discovered along the way?
So from the very beginning. So I was a chemical engineer in college. That's what I went to school for. And I almost worked for a semiconductor company. And when I almost worked for the semiconductor company, I learned a lot about how silicon, in particular, can be a scalable technology to do good. That's why we have computers, we have phones. Like silicon is just a really awesome technology if you can figure out how to make it do things. So when I found out that you could use silicon to make power with solar panels, I got really excited about it because I was like, this will win. Like at scale, it wins. Silicon wins everything at scale. When I found out you could make better lights out of silicon, I got really excited. So I got really excited about renewables right out of the gate once I learned the power they had to help us transition away from fossil fuels. And the excitement really came from seeing how and having a background in silicon and knowing that it at scale would be part of the solution. Not the only solution, but that's what really got me excited was that connection.
And Retrolux is a software company, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so Retrolux is a software company. And what we do is we develop software that makes it easy for contractors to design, develop, sell, and install energy efficient systems in existing buildings. And so what that means is we help people that are out there selling building owners, sell more building owners with better technology, faster, better, cheaper. And that's really important because if we're going to get to a carbon neutral world, we need to have a faster way of getting technologies into facilities. And so I looked at the market, I looked at our industry, and I said, we have a lot of really good technologies. We have a lot of people that want to do this. We need to move faster. And one of the best ways to move fast in anything today is with software. And so how can software enable the market to move faster? What are the key levers that we have to pull to enable this transition to a carbon neutral future to happen faster? And I'll tell you why. And this blew my mind when I found this out. And this is not something I found out even 15 years ago. I found it out in the last 5. It takes 30 to 50 years to turn over an energy system or a current system in an existing building to something new on average. So the first LED lights, and then everybody knows what an LED light is now. They did not 10 years ago. But the first LED lights were getting installed in commercial buildings in the early 2000s. We won't have 95, it'll take till the end of 2020s, the end of this decade, so 30 years later, before 95% of the sockets in our buildings have LEDs in them. 30 years. In that same time zone, I got my first flip phone. I got my first iPod. I bought my 12th version iPhone. I'm going to be on version 25 in that same time frame. Think about that. We were using Motorola Razors, which you might not even know about, but the first flip phones came out. The first flip phones came out when the first LEDs were getting installed, and it's going to take 30 years to get to 95%. And on that same time zone in normal tech, we're going to be on iPhone 12 with AR glasses. Think of the speed of technology that comes out of Silicon Valley, the speed of technology generally, and how slow the building world moves. Now, if that technology in a building lasted 30 years, we might be like, well, it makes sense. We're going to wait for it to wear out, and then we'll replace it. Well, current lights that are not LEDs, they last 2 years. They last less long. Your battery in your iPhone is still charging hard when those lights are burning out. So this isn't a problem of like we just need to wait for it to wear out before we replace it because we don't want to be wasteful. This is a problem of an industry that is just really slow to commercialize new technologies and push them into the market at speed. And so to me, there's lots of reasons why that exists, but a big part of the solution is building a more efficient go-to-market, a more efficient supply chain, a more efficient way to ensure that our buildings are using the latest and greatest, best technologies. So that's what we decided to focus on at Retrolux is how do we shorten the time frame that we take for getting new awesome technologies to reach 95% adoption in commercial buildings. And so that's what we're focused on. I think it's really important because we don't have another 30 to 50 years to get to carbon neutral buildings if we want to reach the goals that our governments are setting, our corporations are setting, individuals are setting worldwide, and the United States, and in states and locally. So we have to move faster to meet those goals, and we're excited to be part of that solution.
So I imagine the operations of a building are pretty wide in scope. Is there a specific slice that you think we're extremely behind and adapting would be faster? You did name the example of light bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
To me, hearing that number of 95% penetration doesn't happen until a good chunk of decades after kind of mind boggles me, because I think about it from a cost perspective, right? Like if my light bulb in my house dies, of course, if it's not an LED, I'm going to replace it with an LED simply because of cost. And I guess operations as well. I don't want to have to deal with replacing it every 2 years if I can buy one that'll last like a decade or more. What do you think is really holding us back?
Yep, so there's a few things that are holding us back. Let's start by talking about the building systems that have the most opportunity. So the first one and the biggest carbon emitter in our facilities is our energy system. So that's turning on the lights, that's plugging in your laptop, that's having nice air conditioning because you're in Houston like David, or maybe heat because you're in Minnesota in the winter, right? Those things right now use energy, and most of our energy still comes from fossil fuels. Our electricity is still primarily fossil fuels, and almost all the heat is fossil fuels. We burn something. So the energy system is by far the most important piece of that. And then if you look at the mix, like what in your building uses energy, like what do you think that might be? Well, the big ones are lighting, HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, that's your heating and cooling, and then plug load. That's your next biggest one. And plug load includes your refrigerators if you're in a house. It includes your laptops, your monitors, your TVs, everything you plug into the wall. Those are your big ones. Lighting is the one that's in progress right now, and we're taking that piece of the pie and we're squashing it way down with LEDs and control. So that one's like well in progress, and one that I think we're already going to get to kind of the finish line on what's capable, what the current technology is capable of doing. Next up is going to be the HVAC systems and plug load. So if people are leaving their monitors on, or leaving their TVs on, or their toasters plugged in, there's going to be a lot of innovation in plug load, and because that's getting to be a bigger and bigger piece of the pie, both because lighting and these other things are getting taken care of, but also because people are plugging more things in, more technology being plugged into the wall, right? And so HVAC, plug load are definitely going to be the biggest sectors that you go after. When you talk about like what are the levers that we have, well, there's quite a few of them. Like most people are like just really excited when they flip the light switch and their lights turn on. And if they go into their office, then hopefully it's comfortable so that they can work comfortably for the day. Or they go send their kids to school and they want to know that their kids are going to be safe. And they don't really think about how those systems get dealt with. And rightfully so. Like we want our buildings just to work for us, and they do a good job. So that's actually a positive thing about the industry. But in our industry, there are some things that are really challenging. The first one is our supply chain and our contractors and the people that are in the business of keeping our buildings maintained. They are incentivized to make sure that you have a good experience in your building. So they want to do things the same over and over again because there's less risk or less perceived risk of having problems. Like if you show up every day and I know we're getting at the end tail into COVID, so you remember you're in an office or your church or a hotel room, and it's perfect temperature, the lights all turn on, the outlets all work. Do you complain? You don't complain. If there's something wrong, do you complain? You complain. Yeah. And if your job is to make sure that everything is going well and you're not getting complaints, are you happy? If you're the facility director, you sure are. You don't want to deal with complaints. You got plenty of those headaches. So they don't want to introduce additional risk into their lives by installing something new that could break more often and cause them more problems. So there's just a lot of inertia around not wanting to create more problems for the people that have to run these buildings. Think about your house. What's the worst thing ever is like when you install something and it doesn't work and you got to get it fixed again. It costs more money and it's annoying. Same thing in big buildings. So there's just a lot of inertia around not trying new technologies until it's proven. LEDs, you just said, hey, of course I'm going to install an LED. 15 years ago, you wouldn't have. You'd be like, it's too dangerous. It's new. I don't really trust it. It's really expensive. So there's just a lot of inertia that has to be overcome. So the way we solve that with software, let's use machine learning to prove out the failure rates faster than the actual failure rates are happening. Let's aggregate lots of buildings so that we can now see what the failure rates are on lots of buildings versus me just knowing what's going on my building and my friends' buildings around me. So aggregate that knowledge. Let's use machine learning to prove out what the real risk is. And let's maybe make an insurance product around it to cover the failures early on. And now we've got a solution for that, right? And just marketing. Let's get people aware that there's new solutions so that they are aware of them. Like Apple does a great job of marketing, right? You got to have a new iPhone. They tell you exactly why. That doesn't exist in the building world. There's no marketing to the building world at that kind of scale. So that sophistication in marketing, that sophistication in making them feel comfortable, that's how you solve that particular problem. Another problem is money. Most business owners and homeowners have limited budgets, and maybe a homeowner would rather go on vacation than upgrade their energy systems. Same thing with businesses. I might want to add a new production line. I want to make more stuff so I can earn more revenue and make more profit. That's more interesting to me as a business owner than trying to fix my dusty old boiler. And so they're going to spend their money where they think they can get the biggest return for their company, and that means they may not have enough money to make these investments. So there's a lot of innovation around financing models, using as a service, just like we use to buy our software or buy our phones and installment programs, buy now, pay later. Like that is coming into our space to remove that upfront cost, which is a deterrent. So there's lots of challenges, and one of the biggest challenges overall in the building world is there's just so many different small challenges, and you add them all up, and it creates too much of a hill for people to get up and over. And so, here at Retrolux, we're trying to chip away at some of the bigger problems. There's other partners that we work with that are chipping away at some of the other ones, and in aggregate, these things are cumulatively creating an environment where we can move faster. So, we don't think we're going to get to where building energy systems and other systems are moving at the same pace as iPhones and how fast people are upgrading their phones. But can we take that 30 years down to 15? Can we take that 30 years down to 10? What is that shrinkage that we can get so that we can move faster? How do we get the cost down so that it doesn't cost as much to upgrade these facilities? So, there are levers to pull, and we are working with our partners and internally to pull as many of those levers as we can as well. So, yeah, there's lots of problems. I just shared a couple of the bigger ones that we've identified and some of the solutions that we think are interesting to help solve those problems. But there's lots more micro problems and small problems, and some of them are localized, some of them are national. So it's a very interesting space because there's lots of things that we can do to make improvements.
I definitely agree that software is a great solution, especially if you want something that scales well. How exactly, or let me clarify, who exactly are your current clients that you're working with, and how do you solve them, or how do you help them solve the problem?
Yeah, so our current customers are contractors and a specialized type of contractor called an energy service company. And these people are, the people that work with people that own and operate buildings to help them get new technologies implemented. So if you've ever had a contractor come over to build you a deck, same deal, you need somebody to help you improve your energy systems. And so what we decided to do was, let's build software to make that customer a badass. Like, let's make them amazing at their job. And then let's make lots of them amazing so that we can scale faster than I could by starting my own contractor company and trying to make my own company big and trying to grow it nationally. So let's build a software that powers that industry, make them faster, make them more effective. So we talk a lot about, can we make them faster? Can we help them spend less time doing the same thing? And can we help them both increase their conversion rate while decreasing their sales cycle? So those are the four big things we really focus hard on is, can we do those things? And if we can do those things, then we're going to shrink that timeline down because they're the ones that ultimately have to go install something. Because remember, these are buildings. These are real world things. Somebody eventually has got to go out there and turn a wrench, snip a wire. And so at some point, you have to make sure you're focused on the interface between the real world and the digital world. And that's what we really focus on, is leveling up the game of the industry that's out there delivering these solutions because they're good at it. They're good at delivering these solutions. They already are. They just need better tools to go faster and do more and do it less expensively. So we really focus on that part of the problem. There's lots of companies, and this is also great. There's lots of companies, startups, established companies investing in new technologies for our buildings. to make them more efficient, make them use less carbon. There's tons of companies in that, and we want to make them also really effective at getting their product to market or their solution to market faster, cheaper, better as well, right? So, we also have customers that are vendors that are making the stuff that goes into our facilities, and we want to make it easier for them than ever to get their technology out in the market and scale. And so that's really what we focus on. I tell people, that are in, that have got a little bit of background in tech, we're kind of like Autodesk, which is design software, plus Salesforce, which helps people sell better, plus Procore, which helps with project management, all bundled into one for our industry. And so, it's all about giving these people the tool set to be better, faster, stronger at their job.
So these people, beyond just a shared understanding and shared goal of a cleaner world, how do they convince other people at scale to address this issue? Like, do they use the economic incentives? Do they use, morality as an incentive? Like, what really moves people based on what you've seen?
Yep. So we decided to start our company to focus on the business world. So commercial buildings, hospitals, these are businesses, and businesses make decisions financially. Ultimately, they make decisions almost entirely financially. They may justify the financials with things like meeting their environmental sustainable governance policy to reduce their carbon spend. But even when they decide they're going to go carbon neutral, like Google and Apple and Walmart and Coca-Cola, I mean, they've all made these pledges. Or even Microsoft is saying, we're going to actually remove all of the carbon we've emitted as a company since we started. When they make those goals, they go out and look for solutions. And when they look for solutions, they still pick the solutions they're going to use financially. So if one solution is 20 times more expensive than the other, they're going to pick the other one, right? So it always comes back to money. And so our software in our industry is very focused on selling the value prop of cost savings. And so that cost saving can be as simple as, hey, you're using less energy. And if you use less energy, you pay less for that energy you didn't use. And that cost saving divided by your cost of implementing that solution is your ROI, right? That's simple, right? I saved $10 on my energy. I spent $50 to get it, and it takes me 5 years to get my money back. And so that payback period, that's a very simplified version of the financial modeling that gets done, but that's ultimately how it gets sold. Now, there's lots of other value props that could be monetized as well. In certain markets, there's carbon trading, so you can get paid for the carbon you remove. In certain places, and certain companies value the goodwill they can get from their customers as part of their brand. And so those are called the non-energy benefits. And those are getting a lot of attention right now. It's like, how do we quantify the non-energy benefits of installing a better heating and air conditioning system in a building with better ventilation? And now people get sick less often, which is very appropriate because of COVID. And if people get sick less often and they come to work more and they're more productive, what does that mean to the company's bottom line? And so that type of thinking starts to get us out of only thinking about the energy side of it, and we can start to think about the people side of it. I love people. I think that that's why we're doing all this ultimately, is to help people. And so how do we quantify things beyond the nuts and bolts of energy and think about how does this impact human beings positively so they can be more productive, healthier, and better contributors to society or to their business or whatever it might be as well. And guess what? All of that actually also has a monetary benefit as well. And the better we get at modeling that, the more things that we can do that will have a payback that a business can get around supporting. And so it's a huge area that's getting focused on right now. It's really important. I always love when you can come back to how this impacts people positively. Because ultimately, I think we're in the people business. We build software to make people's lives better. And one of the ways we do that is by reducing their energy consumption, which reduces carbon emissions, which makes our planet healthier, which means less weather events. And sometimes it's just more direct. Let's put in better lighting so people can see the paper on their desk better and not get as much eye strain, and maybe they don't need glasses for 3 more years in their lives. I mean, that's simple, right? So we think about it in that context of a bigger view of the value of doing these improvements. So I'm an engineer by trade. I love designing and solving problems, and I always love when you can solve a problem in a way where the solution solves multiple problems. So that's always the best. Like one solution, 5 problems solved. And I think that's really where we're seeing the industry go in our buildings. We're finally like, hey, buildings are kind of like cars. We didn't really make improvements to cars for a very long time. And then all of a sudden it's like whoosh, tons of improvements. And all of a sudden cars are really comfortable to be in. There's all these cool tech that make our lives better. And buildings are the same thing's going to happen. You're going to be like, wow, I didn't realize that buildings could have this many benefits to me as a person. And I'm so happy that that's happening. And my building's also carbon neutral. Sweet. I mean, this is the thinking that's happening. This is the next, the second and third order effects that our industry is working on, and something that we're really excited about building software around to support as well.
Is information and education the primary constraint? Like, are there people out there who run these buildings that just don't know there are more cost-effective solutions and more,
So that's a great point. I have a very firm belief that people will make good decisions if they have good information.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the problems that we have, and I shared them earlier, a building maintenance guy or lady, may be scared of implementing a new technology because they don't know, is it really going to work? Is it going to fail a bunch? Is it going to give me the value I want? Is the payback real? And if they don't know those things, or they don't even know the technology exists, they're not going to make good decisions. So I think if people are properly educated about the value they're receiving, they're going to move a lot faster. And so that's one thing that Retrolux we do is we're standardizing the collection and dissemination of information that allows people to make good decisions. And so that's a huge thing. I always as somebody who used to do these projects, I always think, man, if I could just get to that person and help them understand how this new technology can make their business better, make their lives easier, they would all say yes, especially if we take money out of the equation. We say, hey, look, we'll give you the loan. The value you're going to get out of it is more than the loan. So you're in the money from day one with a better technology that makes your people happier, gives you better light, whatever it is. Who says no to that? There are so many technologies right now in the energy space and in the carbon removal space that hit that nail on the head like crazy, and people just don't know. And so they don't act. And again, that's part of our industry not having the marketing clout of an Amazon or an Apple or a Google, and people just don't know. They don't have a way to know. There's no easy way to reach those people. So yeah, and information is definitely key to get to the right people, and it has to be presented in a way that they can understand so they can make decisions as well. So, a business owner is going to have a different view on what's important to them than the facility guy, than a homeowner. And so the information and how it's presented to help them understand what that is going to do for them also, has to be tuned to their ears. And so that's another thing we think a lot about, and something that, we think is very, very important, because we do think people will make better decisions if they have better information.
So I'm not currently a homeowner, but I hope to be in the next few years. And one of the things I think about is I would love to buy solar panels for wherever I live. And that's independent of the financial equation. But I do recognize that for a lot of people who are more financially incentivized, even with the government stimuluses and rebates, like I think the last time I checked, the average ROI, if you would call it that, of installing a solar system is still on average lower than the typical average of the S&P 500 over the last X years. So people would prefer to put their money in the S&P 500 versus investing into solar panels. Do you see a parallel problem also in the world of business? Because you do mention the fact that there is ROI, but the unfortunate thing is it's just not just you can just snap their fingers and get the problem solved. There is someone that needs to turn that wrench to make the magic happen. And is that a major friction point from what you've seen, the actual doing of work, even if the money incentives are there or clear or unclear?
Yeah, so there's a couple things I want to unpack in there for you, David. So number one, a lot of people, I think, make false equivalencies around the investment decision they're making. So if you think about a homeowner and say the payback on a solar project is 10 years, that means they're earning about 10% per year. That's pretty darn good, actually. You can do better in crypto right now, but you're probably not doing better over the long haul in the Dow. And so that's actually a good investment. Say it's 20 years, and it's a 5-year annual return. Now you're closer to bonds, and you're like, I don't know.
Right.
What's the payback on a granite countertop? Negative. What's the
Yeah.
payback on that deck in the back of your house? Negative. They actually have a scale where they talk about different homeowner improvements.
Yeah.
Every single one of them doesn't even return $1.
Hmm.
And so homeowners, will go and buy a new house because they love the granite countertops and not care that there's not a solar system on the roof. Well, the solar system is going to save you money every month in your energy bill and do so in a way that actually returns the entire cost of the solar system. Nothing else in a house does that. So I look at that and I go, well, are you helping people actually make accurate comparisons?
I see.
And so business owners, we talk to them, and a lot of times they want to think about it in this false equivalency of, I got $100,000 to spend, and I can spend it on a new production line, and I'm going to get this much new revenue, and I'm going to get this IRR on it, or I could just put the money in a bank and earn market rate returns, like you said, based on the market. And instead, we say, well, how much does it cost for you to get $1 of profit? How much more revenue does it take for you to get $1 of profit? And many times, they'll make these investments, and their overall profit margin is 10%, and so they want to, if they want to double their overall profit, they would have to add double, the production lines. Well, let's say they can only add 10% extra, so they get 1% more. Many companies, 3%, 5% of their spend is in energy, water, power, stuff. If I could save them half of that without them spending a single dollar of their money, what did their profit margin just do? Their profit margin increased by 1.5%. And they used somebody else's money. They didn't have to spell a single additional widget, and their profit increased the same. And so a lot of what we do is we try to help CFOs and business owners think about what is happening in a way that actually is realistic to something that matters in their business, which is profit. And so that's one way of thinking about it. Another way of thinking about it is, say you're a commercial office owner, and commercial offices is all about what they call net operating income. It's the profit. It's all about maximizing the profit per building, which they call net operating income. So how much am I earning in rents? How much am I paying in cost? And whatever's left over is my net operating income. And so if you were going to increase your net operating income, you could charge more rent. You could use less energy. You could, there's all these different strategies you could have. Most of them, are challenging to do because you're in a market where you can't raise rents very easily. It's going to be real hard to raise rents during COVID or right at the end of it, right? But if you wanted to do an energy system right now and you use somebody else's money and you're able to save, say $100 a month in energy, your loan on that is $90. You get $10 of additional profit, and you didn't take any risk, spend any of your own money to get it. Why don't you just do that every single time? That to me is a no-brainer, right? Because you were looking at it through the lens of, I don't have to spend any capital, I got no real risk, and I'm going to get an improvement to what matters most to me, which is my profit. And so there's a lot of this thinking going on in our industry as well, which is, let's shift the conversation from, is this a good investment, to, can we increase your profit margin without you having to pay a dime for it? And can we take all the risk on delivering that value to you? So that's also happening in the industry where people say, look, we're so confident that we're going to deliver you the value we say we can deliver to you, that we're willing to not only pay for it, but we're only willing to get paid if I deliver it to you. And so now all of a sudden you're like, why wouldn't I do this? I don't have to worry about it anymore, because if they say it's going to save me $100 and they're going to only charge me $90, but it only saves me $80, I only have to pay $80. I'm still net even, and so you have no risk. If they do save me $100, great, I get $10, but my downside protection is awesome. And so that's great. And so then you layer in, well, do these new systems actually perform better? And the short answer is yes. LEDs put out better light, they last longer, they don't flicker. There's all these additional benefits of them. You can control them, you can change the light level so people don't have eye strain. There's all these additional benefits that you're getting that somebody else is paying for that you have no risk on. So again, I think our industry and just generally, it's all about helping to tell the story better so that people can make better decisions instead of having people continue to make decisions based on the old way of thinking about these problems. So same thing with how we sell cell phones, how we sell software. At some point, you're like, you know what? Let's talk about it different. Let's tell a different story. And let's help people transfer from an old way of investing or making decisions to a new way that actually is in their own best interest, that also happens to get better results for
Hmm.
the building owner, the vendor, the contractor. And what I'm really passionate about and why we're focused on energy efficiency and removing carbon is also the planet. So can we win, 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 win? And we're finding more and more that there's business models and stories that can be told that allow for that win, win, win for all parties involved. And that's where I get really excited, is that convergence of awesome. And I think we're just seeing a lot of that in our industry right now. And that's why we're seeing just tremendous tailwinds and tremendous amount of interest and activity in the space.
I love seeing multi-party wins as well. Would you happen to know the percentage of, I guess, buildings out there that are in that sweet spot where it's a clear win for all parties involved? Is that like a large pool? And out of that
Well,
pool, are they all eligible for the loans that you mentioned?
we have 120 customers, coast to coast, Australia and Canada, and we have had tens of thousands of projects completed by our customers.
Hmm.
And I used to do the work as well. I used to go out and talk to these business owners and look for opportunities. And I can say that I don't think I've seen a single building that can't have something done that would improve it. Not a single one. There's good reasons for that. As soon as a building is built, it's obsolete already. They're using technology that was designed for the building a year ago. And architects and engineers never put all of the latest and greatest technology in them because the upfront budgets don't support it, or they're not aware of it, or they're not energy experts, or they're doing their best, but they miss things. They don't get to put them in because of a budget. So every building that's built immediately has opportunity. And as time goes on, there's this thing called entropy.
Right.
Things fall apart, things get old, things need to be replaced. And so as time goes on, there's more and more and more opportunity. And I have yet to find anybody that can get all of the opportunity in one swing. And so I would say generally all buildings have an opportunity. Now, that being said, some buildings might not have as good of opportunities, as many opportunities, both in scale and cost and savings, but generally all buildings have opportunities that under the right framework would be cost effective.
I see.
Yep. I mean, think about your house. Who has a house that doesn't need something repaired?
Right. Right.
Or an apartment. I mean, whether you home-own or you rent, there's always something in a building that could be improved. It's just the nature of buildings, and is that they are imperfect products. And we could do another podcast, David, with the challenges of building our buildings as custom buildings versus the assembly line model of cars. But a big reason why our buildings are so open for opportunities for improvement is that by and large our buildings are relatively custom built instead of being built in a factory. So like I said, there's a whole other conversation, but there's companies that are factory building now and setting up ways to control the process and build a more repeatable product that doesn't have as many opportunities. So those are all coming as well. That's another way of solving the new construction problem and that entire building carbon neutral issue. So generally, like I said, all buildings have opportunities. The scale and scope and size of them definitely building dependent. But I have yet to find any building that I couldn't do something in, and I don't think any of my customers have found them either because they don't exist.
To narrow down the scope of the question, what would you say is the percentage of buildings that have highly clear economic incentive to restructure the way they're expending and consuming energy?
Yep. So let's just throw. So what I see in the marketplace is businesses typically they're going to spend their own money. So we're not talking about these better stories that I was telling earlier about using other people's money to do things. But say I'm just a business owner and I don't like debt. Period.
Right.
I'm only going to spend my own money. What we find is that the kind of average cutoff is these are businesses, so they're making business decisions, and so they have to think about how long my business is going to be around, how long do I want to do it, how long is my lease, and they got all these things going on. And we kind of see 5 years as where there's this break point where most businesses under 5 years, they're going to listen. Over 5 years, the more years you add on, the interest is definitely declining fast. And around 10 years, things really start to get tough. So generally, 5 years to 10 years. If we use 5 years, um, I would say that, the buildings that have something that could be done with a 5 year or less payback is at least 50%,
Hmm.
at least 50%, and probably higher if you're willing to do small things. So this is the other thing. Most buildings have, I would say 90%, 95% of buildings have something you could do to save them money under 5 years. It might be something really, really small that nobody really wants to build a business around selling,
Right.
right? So like people that are implementing those ideas need to make money as well. And if
Right.
you go into a building and you're used to selling them $50,000 system improvements, and you find something that's going to be $10,
Right.
you may see it and just not say anything about it because you don't want to deal with it. So there's some of that going on as well, because there may not be big enough opportunities for vendors to be interested in doing. But a lot of that gets taken care of with bigger companies, with local sustainability leads and sustainability teams and facility directors that are just going around fixing things that are all the small stuff. So the small stuff still gets managed. It usually just gets managed by the internal teams versus external vendors. So, and in that case, I've been involved in what are called treasure hunts, where you get the students at a school, or you get the team, the interested staff at a business, and you walk around, and what's crazy? They all know where there's problems because they're in there living there, and
Right.
they're like, so here's are the types of things to look at, and they're like, that door's drafty, that window's drafty, that light never turns off at night, that copier's plugged in and worrying when I leave. Like, they know where there's energy being spent because they're in the buildings experiencing it every day, and they're super awesome at finding what we like to call no-cost opportunities,
I see.
infinite payback,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because you don't pay a dime for it. You just need people to turn the lights off at night, or you need people to shut the windows when they go home, or right? So there's a lot of these no-cost, low cost opportunities, and all buildings have those as well. So like I said, it's all buildings. I think one of the challenges, we talk about challenges, and we talk about challenges, and they didn't talk about, how, there's just so many things you can do or could do, and there's such a fragmentation in the market, that also creates some challenges. If you want to buy a smartphone, how many options do you have? Not that many. Any kind of, if you're going to have a phone anymore, it's going to be probably a digital, a cell phone. You're not going to buy a landline anymore, really, much for yourself personally, right? So in the built world, there's also just a lot more options, and that creates, I think, another opportunity for software to be successful, because software is really good at parsing lots of opportunities and recommending or honing in on what the right solution should be. So again, there's a software solution for problems where there's just too much information for any one person to really consolidate into an action plan as well.
So you talked about software at large being able to address this problem, and we lightly touched upon it in the past. But can you dive deeper on how specifically AI helps tackle this problem?
Yeah, so I'll share a few things that are happening with machine learning. There's a lot of problems. A university-led effort just came up with, gosh, I want to say it was in the hundreds of opportunities they saw for AI to machine learning to make a difference in energy. And this is not just buildings. This is like solar and batteries and wind farms and stuff. And it might have even been clean tech in general, and included things like agriculture and forestry. But it was hundreds of use cases that they identified that had significant value prop opportunities that machine learning could be used for.
I see.
I think one of the ones that's the most commonly cited is utilities that produce energy for all of us sometimes can't produce enough.
Right.
You have brownouts and you have blackouts.
Right.
And the way you solve that problem is you either build more generation, so you have more power when people are using more power, or you get people to use less power when you're running out of power. Texas, for instance, just had those things, and if you could have dropped the load way down, you wouldn't have had the blackout, right? So they call that demand response. And you're responding to the demand by reducing the energy consumption of the users. And that's basically what demand response is. So machine learning could be used to both more accurately predict when you're going to need to get demand
I see.
response or reduce the load. And if you had things like air conditioners and thermostats and plugs and all these things connected to the internet, machine learning could also get really good at telling what things should get turned off that aren't going to have a negative impact on the people using them.
Hmm.
And so that's a common machine learning technique where you've got lots of data and building algorithms around it would be really hard. But can we let the software just start to learn based on past behavior how to predict future behavior in a way that's intelligent? So that's an example of one that I think is pretty easy to understand is can we let the machines get smarter at getting us all to use less energy when there's not enough power out there so we don't have blackouts? And that's a perfect example of unlimited algorithmic attempts to solve it, or just let the computers get smart by looking at what's happened in the past and projecting a better way of managing the future.
Would that not require a large IoT investment on many homeowner, building owner, hospital owner's part?
So yes, it does. I wouldn't say require, but the system gets smarter, better, stronger the more things that are connected to the internet that can be controlled for energy consumption. So whether that's lighting systems, thermostats, this is one reason why the utility companies have been investing heavily in subsidizing the cost of Nest thermostats and these different systems, because those systems all have the capability to talk to the utility. And that was one of the requirements for selling them. So what you don't know as a homeowner is if you have a Nest or an Ecobee in your house, is that at some point you're going to get a mailer from your utility that says, do you want to opt in to letting us control your thermostat within these rules? And you're going to be like, why would I do that? And they're going to be like, because if you do, we'll pay you. Because it's cheaper to pay you than it is to build another solar plant or wind plant or gas plant or coal plant. It's cheaper to pay you for that on-demand power adjustment in those infrequent times they really need it, which could be once in 5 years in the case of 10 years. I mean, 20 years in Texas, the last time they had a blackout like that?
I think it's 30.
30. So once every 30 years we need it.
Yeah.
We really need it. And so every year we're willing to pay you, David, an extra $50 to have it on demand. And then if we actually have to use it, we'll pay you a little bit more for the inconvenience. So that's how those systems work. And so then, machine learning can get really good at predicting ahead of time so they don't get caught where they got 10 minutes to figure things out before the thing crashes, and it crashes before they can figure it out. Like the machines would have already known. They would have already told you, David, we're going to turn your heater off for a while and all of your outlets for a second. And, if we get through this spot, we'll let you know. If not, you may have to go another couple hours. And you're like, I'm willing to get paid $50 for the first hour. The second hour, you're paying me $100. Third hour, you're paying me $500. And you can put those numbers in there. And this is already happening. This is happening in businesses. It's happening in agriculture. This is already going on. And so the longer you're willing to hold, the more they'll pay you incrementally because they need it so bad that you're cheaper than the other options they have. And you're like, as a consumer, you're like, I wasn't even going to be home today. I was going to be at the office, so I'll just get paid. And so that's a great opportunity for machine learning to get smarter at who to go after because they know your purchasing habits. Maybe they know that your cell phone is in your pocket and you're at work, so they know that you're going to be more open to letting your house go down, right? This is machine learning. This is like just ripe for it. So there's a lot of we can keep riffing on this as long as you like, but it's a good example of where you can start to align the interest of utilities and power generators and power suppliers with their users, which are the people that are consuming that energy, and start to create these really nice incentives to get people to do things that are in their own interest, but also have extreme value to the grid or the community of people that they're sharing that power resource with.
And is Retrolux trying to tackle part of this AI problem as well, or is that something you're trying to plan out for the future?
Yeah, we do. So we're in the middle of prototyping a machine learning product. It is definitely stealth mode. I'm not going to talk about it, but yeah, we found several use cases in our industry that we think we could build some interesting technology around. We're prototyping one as we speak, and look to take it to some of our key customers here once the prototype is complete to get their feedback and start to iterate. But we're absolutely identifying, where the best. I look at machine learning. It's like email. It's like Excel. It's a database. Think of it, machine learning as a tool to do cool things, not as the end game itself. So we look at that as a really interesting wrench. And so we're looking into our industry and saying, where would that wrench turn a really important bolt? like where's that at? And so that's what we've been really looking at. And we found a couple that we think would be, move the needle substantially in our industry and provide a lot of value to our customers. But yes, I mean, absolutely, we see opportunities for it. And it's really, again, about can we make our customers move faster? Can we shorten their sales cycle? Can we reduce their costs? Can we, these are the big levers that we're trying to find. And we're like, where can machine learning really make a big move? And we found a few of them. I found a few places I think it's perfect for. Now, the fun part is, and this is where I get excited solving problems, like, can we actually deliver? And that's always fun because machine learning is still a relatively new technology, and can it actually do what we think it can do in these use cases? Do we have the right data sets? Do we have enough information? Is the data sets big enough? Like those things we don't know yet. We're working through them, but I know for sure that the premise of what we can do, the concept of what we're going to do, and the value we're going to create by doing it, those things I'm very certain on. It's just, does our industry, again, kind of speaking to your comment, like, is there enough IoT devices out there in our industry? Is there enough things going on for it to be valuable yet? Or do we want to wait until a few more things get digitized so we have the right data for it to be actually able to work? And so that's what we're working through right now, and it's exciting. I love getting new tools as an entrepreneur to play with, and I look at that as a really fun one.
Cool. Well, I've learned a lot during this conversation. I'm really thankful for your time. I just want to also be respectful towards it. So I usually just like to wrap up all these calls the same way. What's the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you if that's something they'd like to do?
Yeah, definitely. David, I don't know how you reach your customers, but you're more than welcome to share my email with them. And they can also find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Leif Elgethun on the planet, so if you type my name in, you will find the only one, and it will be me. So one of the benefits of having a really weird, unique name is it is easy to find me, and LinkedIn is a good way to do so.
I have the opposite problem, but that's another conversation.
Yeah,
Well, thanks for your time today.
cool. Thanks, David.